Being home alone is great. Just ask Macaulay Culkin. You can put your feet up, no one can tell you to turn the volume down, and what you do with the bathroom door open or closed is your business and yours alone. But there's nothing scarier than a noise you can't explain when you're home alone. Pop your ears open as we listen to some true stories of the freakiest things that ever happened to people while they were home alone. Have you ever had something strange happen to you while you were keeping down the fort? Let me know down below. I'd love to hear your stories. Oh, and I'm Taylor, the casual crypt keeper. But you already knew that. Let's get into it. Number 5. Our first story, and not to give away too much of the plot here, but a lot of the other stories, came from a Reddit thread positing the question, what's your scariest Home Alone story? There were many good ones, but the literal top comment was this by Killer or Angel. It was an average night around 9 p.m. Me and my cousin are at his house, and I'm sitting for the night while my mom and aunt are shopping, and my dad and uncle are at the movies. We're just sitting there feeling strange. Something was wrong, but I couldn't really put my finger on it. I got up and walked to the back door to lock it. When I came back, I saw what was causing that weird feeling. In the window, there was a decrepit and homeless looking man just staring into the window looking at us. My protector instincts turned on. I pretended I didn't see the guy, and I told my cousin it was time to go to bed because it was too late. I took him upstairs knowing damn well there was a man outside that wanted in. Now at the time, I was 5'8" and only about 125 pounds. I did play football at school though. If I remember correctly, I went downstairs to grab a meat tenderizer and I turned back to the window. He wasn't there. I ran to the front door and made sure it was locked, and then I ran back upstairs and went to my cousin and sat down in front of the door. He asked me what was happening, and I told him it was nothing to worry about, that he should just get some sleep. I called the cops and then my dad. The cops said they were half an hour away and my dad was 45 minutes away. I heard a window shatter and the sound of boots. I told my cousin to stay completely silent and hide under the blankets. It was horrifying. I grabbed the tenderizer and waited. About 5 minutes pass and I hear the boots walk upstairs. I heard him opening the doors to my aunt and uncle's bedroom, then the bathroom. I heard him make his way to the basement. After what felt like forever, the cops burst in, kicking the door in, and got the guy. Turned out, he was an escapee from a mental hospital a full province away. That's literally like the plotline to a horror movie. Absolutely terrifying, but good on him for having that big cousin instinct and making sure that the cousin was safe. And if you're looking for more freaky stories in this sort of vein, Top 5 Scary has all of that and then some. If you want something else a little spicier than scary stories, we got aliens, cryptids, conspiracies, true crime, anything freaky, we've done a video or two on. So hit subscribe, please hit that little bell so you don't miss a scream. But would you kindly do that at the end of this video, because I got 4 more scary Home Alone stories coming up for you right now. Number 4. It's another post from this same thread asking about people's scary Home Alone stories. This one very likely is going to have you locking the door tight and probably spending the night with the blankets pulled all the way up to your eyes. I had just moved into my first apartment. It was around 8:30 p.m. and I heard the doorknob moving like somebody was putting a key in it and turning and knocking. At first, I got pretty excited that my at the time boyfriend was home, but then I realized that it was too early in the day. He usually came home nearer to 11 and it was only 8:30 still. So I looked outside at the kitchen window and I didn't see his car or anyone's car that I recognized parked outside, and that's when I started to panic. The doorknob kept moving for a few more seconds and then stopped. A few minutes later, they had some piece of metal that they were sticking between the door to try and open the door. I freaked out, and I locked myself in the bathroom. I grabbed a blade from the kitchen to try and protect myself. I called the cops. Whatever was on the other end was trying to pry the bathroom door open for about 3 full minutes before they stopped. Interrupting the story a bit, can you even imagine how horrifying that would be? 3 minutes locked in your bathroom waiting for the boys in blue to arrive while someone's clawing at your door? This person is braver than I. For context, this video has been about 4 minutes up to this point. Imagine the entire video you just watched, but you're petrified and shaking in a bathroom. Anyway, back to the story. Eventually the cops came in and they found an elderly man roaming my apartment with a crowbar. He used to live in my apartment and he wanted a bunch of stuff back that we took when we moved in. Police told me he was delusional. I'm so thankful and glad I didn't answer to the door. To this day, my heart still skips a beat when someone knocks on my door. And mine too. I don't think I'm opening my door for strangers anytime soon. Number 3. I was home alone and my parents were out of town. We just moved into the house, so there was an empty lot next to the house with a half-built house on it. My parents were the types to always leave the door unlocked. While they were gone, I was watching TV when all of a sudden, the door that leads into my garage from the inside starts to wiggle. I put my TV on mute to listen and I see it move this time. I start freaking out and I'm kind of in shock looking for the phone. I can't find the house phone, so I search for myself. I remembered I left my charger in my parents' car, so now I am frantically looking for the house phone. Our house was pretty new, so my mom hadn't even put blinds or drapes up in the kitchen or living room. Again, no blinds, no phone. Whoever was wiggling the doorknob starts banging on the windows in the living room. I shoot upstairs looking frantically for the phone and also trying to figure out how and where I'd jump out of my house to get away from the maniac that's probably outside my door if I needed to. He then starts pounding on my door. I can tell at this point that he's using something metal or plastic by the sound of the thumps. I genuinely thought he was going to shoot my door open. I remember at that because I was mad at myself for being such a fool. I frequently talked on the phone, and I always just left it lying around. I never put it back on the base. I wanted so badly to push the button to detect where my house phone is, but I thought if he heard where it was, he'd break the window near it and take it. I then remembered I left the phone in my mom's room, and as I passed the hallway, I see her dad's old weapon in my parents' bedroom, a long arm. I find the phone and I call 911. As I'm on the phone, the window breaks. I'm upstairs and I am scared to death, and suddenly everything goes silent. I'm waiting in my parents' bedroom. Pitch black closet for what seems like eternity. I hear the sirens. Cops show up, but there's no one to be found. I figured they hadn't gone too far since the incident had just occurred, but the cops never found my tormentor. On the plus side, the company that built the house next to us hired overnight security for the house, which was definitely refreshing. Number 2. In fall 2016, I moved into half of a really old house. It was built in the 1880s, a stone's throw from the original campus of Indiana State, which is now a park filled with homeless people. The owners basically turned it into a weird duplex kind of deal. Anyway, the layout of this house was pretty weird. You walked in the door and you were in a living room type space, and then you kept walking and there was a doorway to a bedroom, and past that was the kitchen. No doors. Only door inside the apartment was to the bathroom and one that led to the shared basement. This is a terrible living situation, may I say. My first night there was uneventful. I was kind of uncomfortable because I hadn't lived by myself in a long time, and I was just sort of feeling lonely and on edge. I stayed up late and eventually fell asleep, but woke up around 3 in the morning. Cliché, I know. What woke me up sounded like a group of drummers were drumming on every flat surface of the living room. It went on for a while and I was completely terrified. It was just a cacophony of sound. After about 2 or 3 minutes, I finally gathered up the courage to get up and check on it. And soon as I passed the threshold to the living room, it just stopped. Nothing happened the rest of the night, but I didn't get much sleep at all. A couple of days later, my friend was visiting and he was about to leave. We were standing by the front door to my bookshelf and I told him about how I was having trouble sleeping, and I told him that story about my first night there. As I was saying this, a book threw itself off the bookshelf and onto the floor 3 feet away. It had to fly past the dresser the shelf was perched and landed between the two of us. He just gave me a creeped out look and said, "I have to go." And I don't blame him. Eventually, I asked the guy in the other half of the apartment what was up, as he'd lived there for 8 years. He told me that no one stayed longer than a year and they all reported the same stuff. For whatever reason, he said nothing ever happened on his side. Doesn't make sense, but there it is. And sometimes, you just don't get the answers, and that's way scarier. And number 1, do you remember your first job? Mine was a newspaper route. Maybe yours was like a grocery store clerk or a babysitter. This next tale is a tale of babysitting gone deeply wrong. Perhaps one of the most infamous home invasion stories in American history is the babysitter killings in 1978. Lauren Strode was a young woman looking to take on a bit of responsibility and earn some spare pocket cash for the upcoming summer. She and her friends had a bit of a sitters club. On October 31st, 1978, Strode was looking after Tommy Doyle, a neighborhood boy while his parents were out, alongside friends Ann Brackett and Linda Vanderklok looking after one Lindsay Wallace. It seemed like it would be a fun night like any other in a sleepy town. Unfortunately, unbeknownst to the girls, earlier that week a mental patient from Smith's Grove Sanitarium nearby had escaped containment and was on the loose and suspected to be around the Haddonfield area. A quiet investigation being led by Sheriff Brackett, Anne's father, and a psychiatrist at Smith's Grove was underway to try and apprehend the patient, who had been incarcerated after killing his sister years ago in a fit of unprecedented, terrifying violence. The patient had disguised himself and was stalking the streets of Haddonfield and had come across Strode out of a psychotic obsession. He stalked the girl for days until eventually making his move, and then proceeded to invade the home of Linda Vanderclock and strangled her alongside boyfriend Bobby Sims. Strode protected the youth she was looking after, and thankfully both Tommy Doyle and Lindsay Wallace were not harmed in any way, and boldly attacked the invader with a knitting needle, subduing him long enough for authorities to arrive, where he was apprehended and returned to Smith's Grove Sanitarium, where he remained for 40 years. Strode remained in Haddonfield, where she lives quietly and would prefer not to be disturbed, looking after her daughter and granddaughter, and does not celebrate Halloween much anymore. Well, that's about all she wrote for this one, my ghouls and goblins. You take it easy now, creep on creeping on, and I'll see you in the next one.